Boy, I tell you, it's a little strange waking up to an engine block on your kitchen table in the morning. I don't like all this stuff that's splurging out of the block. I got a little pick. It's like a sharp little spoon looking thing. And I'm just going to go around the inside of the block, and I don't want to tear it out. I want to just go like this and just cut it out, because I don't want this junk sitting in the block. There's also a drain hole right here, and if you can, pick the stuff out. I mean, you really, it's kind of okay. I mean, this stuff really does stick really well. I got another one here too, this little guy. Or maybe if I go like this, you can see what I'm doing. That's all the junk that could potentially end up in your pickup tube and run through your oil pump and yuck. And all this stuff on the outside I don't have to care about. I got these oil galley plugs. I took them out because of spun rod bearings. So you got metal particles going through all the oil galleys in this thing. And there were plugs for it, so I figured what the heck, I'd take them out. I've been looking all over the internet and looking at the owners or the repair manuals and everything to see what the torque is on these. And I couldn't find one. And there's this red sealant that's on the plug, and now it's stuck in the threads, and this crap's hard as a rock. And it didn't clean out when it was washed. This stuff just doesn't want to come out. And I was wondering what kind of seal is on here. There isn't one. And the dealer's not giving you any information on these at all. You know, regardless, I took them out, so everything's nice and clean now. So I'm pretty sure that the flat just seals against here really well. I don't know if this is a Loctite or an actual sealer. They're not telling me. If you buy these, the crap is on these threads. If you actually buy these things new, and I'm pretty sure you just screw them in and run them home. There's no washer or gasket on them. I got an 18mm by 1.5 tap, so I'm just going to clean these out. And I got a cheesy vacuum cleaner that I never use for anything, and I'm just going to vacuum all the crud out of here after I clean out the threads, and then I'm gonna put some thread sealer on here. I suppose I could use ultra gray. I'm gonna put too much on here. I'm going to make sure that it's above the thread so it doesn't get in the oil galley. I'm going to screw it in here, and it should just squish out and seal, I hope. I hope. It's really nice of the dealer to tell you how to deal with this. The only one I'm really worried about is the one in the back, because if that one leaks, I got to take out the engine or the transmission to re-seal it. I might as well put these cam plugs in next. Should be 3 of these. These here get torqued to 51 foot-pounds. They don't give you a torque spec for this. It's 6 by 1 millimeters, so it should be like, I don't know, 5 foot-pounds. Right around there. I'm just going to put it on by hand. Time for more amazing goop. I don't have a seal installer, so I'm just tapping this in with a hammer. The whole thing is, if you don't have a seal installer, you always want to hit on the outside ring. And don't hit it too hard, just tap it in. Now you want this flush with the outside of the block. You don't want to pound it all the way in, because there's a drain hole in here. You want that exposed. That's got to be open. The rest of this just gets a small, little tiny bead of ultra gray. Just a little bit. And you got to make sure these line up with the crank. You just kind of eyeball it a little bit. See what this did? The seal folded over. There. Fell right on that time. I just had to put more oil on the seal. I put the spring back in there and it fell right on this time. Torque to 5 foot-pounds, or, well, 5 times 12 in inch-pounds, which would be 60. He gave me this stuff to put on. It's an aftermarket pickup tube and an aftermarket windage tray. Alright, I had somebody help me bring this out in the garage. I can be like a normal mechanic in a shop now and put the rest of this together in a garage. It doesn't need to be super clean like the rest of this. I got the pan, it's all washed. I had Jake wash the pan. When you clean these, if you don't buy a new one, if you clean it, you want to make sure it's super clean, and you want to be able to run your hand in here and not feel any grit or grime or any loose particles of anything anywhere in the pan. Just to make sure it's nice and clean. Don't ever paint the inside of the pan. I painted the outside because all the paint was coming off, but not the inside. Then you want to put like an 1/8 inch bead silicone around it, and there's an O-ring right here. Funky looking little thing that goes on there. You don't want to move this around either. You just want to put it straight down and just leave. Yeah, I put the flywheel on here too. I did that just to make, because I'm probably going to need to stop the crankshaft when I put all this together. So I put that on before I put it on the engine stand. You know, put a little brake clean on a rag. Yeah, these little shop rags and towels or whatever, they really like to leave fuzz on everything too, so you got to make sure there isn't any. Yeah, do the same thing with the head. I had Jake do a valve job to these too. These are all assembled. You have to assemble them to get the valve lash right. So I got to take all this apart so I can get it all the bolts. You just want to make sure all of these are in order. These cam caps, that's a big deal. They have to be put in the same spot, or your lash is going to be wrong. I just put this crankshaft sprocket on just for now to get these marks to line up. I actually thought that this was top dead center. Usually your marks on the crankshaft for pretty much every engine is top dead center, but on this Subaru it's not, because the pistons are down. And that's good, because normally I would zero this and then turn it back or forward just a little bit to get the pistons off of top dead center, because you don't want to assemble this engine, or any engine for that matter, at top dead center until you start putting all the timing components on, because you don't want to take the risk of having any of the valves hit the pistons. So just zero that mark and you'll be fine. You can assemble this thing. You want to lightly oil these threads. Okay, now I want to go in a diagonal motion, crisscross, start in the center, work your way out. I'm just going to snug these down till they're zero. I'm going to do them all at 22 foot-pounds. And then I got to do them all to 51. And I got to back them all off. The manual says you got to back them all off 180 degrees twice. And it says you want to do the centers at 27 foot-pounds. Then the outer ones go to 170 inch-pounds, so that's about 14 foot-pounds. I'm just double checking them. And then you got to tighten all of these down 90 degrees, and you got to do it twice for a total of 180 degrees. Quarter turn on each one twice. These are kind of cheesy, but they do work. I think I've seen these at Harbor Freight. This one I got a snap on. You can get a really fancy, expensive torque wrench too that does the same thing. I'm just making sure there's no grit or grime in these cam journals. More brake cleaner. Get all the oil off of this stuff. You got to use gasket sealant on this too. Put a little bit of oil on here. These cam caps are already oiled. I'm going to put some on here anyways. These are actually marked so you can't really screw it up. Intake. This one says exhaust. Put a little oil on here. There's two different seals. The intake seal is the big one, and the exhaust seal is the little one. This is your intake sprocket. It actually seals on the sprocket. You want to put just a drip of oil on here too. Now a good idea is to push it all the way in. You'll feel it hit the cam, and just pull it out just a hair. It should be about flush with these tapers on here. Okay, now just for fun, I'm going to get these marks kind of close. There's two marks, the double marks. Those face together on the cams. There, those are facing pretty close to where they're supposed to be when the belt gets lined up. These caps too, they're kind of hard to screw up. There's an arrow that faces front, and you can see that says 31471. The 1 is actually an I, and this one says 3E471, and that's intake and exhaust. And there's a stamp on the head right here that says 471. So you can't really screw it up. This goes on the intake facing forward. And this one goes on the exhaust facing forward. So if you take them off, you'll know how to put them back on. And then these are shouldered bolts. The other ones are not. These go on the rear caps. Guess what? More Permatex. You want to put it on this outside edge and this inside edge, outside edge, and you want to keep it away from these grooves, because those grooves are those are for oil, in case oil can get in and out of this seal area. So you don't want it going over that far. It's just supposed to seal the outside, because the valve cover runs across this edge. Now with these, you just want to screw them down a little bit at a time, just to, because them camshafts might be on some lobes. Kind of want to go in the center and work your way out. Okay, now I want to go around and tighten all these to 96 inch-pounds. And then all these inside bolts I want to do 120 inch-pounds. If you see too, when I'm torquing this, you know, I don't just let the torque wrench click once and be done. I keep clicking it and clicking it and clicking it because sometimes it just wants to go a little bit more. I do the same thing with connecting rods too. I just go over them again and again and again until I'm comfortable with it. I just want to go around with a flashlight and make sure this gasket sealant's squished out all the way around. I can actually see that hole in there too, and it's not blocked or anything. The gasket sealant didn't make it that far, which is what I want. Now I can go ahead and put the valve cover on. I'm going to put a little gasket sealant right here on these edges, these corners. Some people gob it all around here. I don't think you need to. It looks like somebody did it that way before, so I'm going to put gasket sealant on here too. This whole car is just one big mess of gasket sealant. Gasket. If you're confused about any of these bolts and where they go and how long they need to be, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just drop them in the holes, and then when you do, they should be all the same length. See, they're all the same. That's how you know it's right. I'm not going to use a torque spec on these. I'm just going to run them down by hand. I'm sure if you did it, it'd be about 96 inch-pounds, just like these front caps. Oil pressure switch requires thread sealant, PTFE. I put paste on it, and then I put PTFE tape over it. Most people just use the tape. For these O-rings, it might be a good idea to use some silicone paste or dielectric grease. I tried to keep this mess all in one piece. Let's see how it goes back on. This thing don't even stay in here. It's junk. Alright, I think I'm going to put the water pump on next. This gasket, it's got black stuff on it that's kind of like the same junk they put on an MLS gasket, the head gasket. It's a sealant, but I like to put just a really super fine coat of ultra gray on here too. You don't want to get carried away with this at all either. If you're going to put gasket sealant on it, it's just a you know, little extra insurance. So you actually it actually, you know, it's kind of translucent. You can kind of see through it. It's so thin, and it barely any of this will even squish out. People usually don't even put anything on here. I do though, just because I put an ASIN timing belt kit on here too. It's a little more expensive, but it's the only one I found that's all Japan. All of these pulleys get torqued at 29, and then this little guy goes to 18. This pulley, they only go on one way. It's pinned, and you wanna put a good amount of oil on it here, just to make sure this slides on really nice. I got a torque that's at 22 foot-pounds. Then I gotta go 45 degrees. Okay, I'm done trying to torque angle this. I'm just gonna torque it to 70 foot-pounds. Enough with the torque angle jazz. I'm just going to lightly clamp this, very lightly. Get out my trusty belt diagram, which tells me half the story. There's little dots and doodads and marks all over this thing, and they go okay. That one's lined up. There's a little notch right here. I don't know if you can see it or not. Then this one's lined up. And then this one's lined up with the mark. And then this one's lined up. And this one. That's all lined up, so that's right. So now I can go ahead and pull a pin on this tensioner. Now I got all these don't let the belt fall off deals to go on here somehow. Alright, I got to set these guides up between 0.2 and 0.6 inches. So like, I don't know, a piece of cardboard is just a hair under. So I fold it in half. And that's what I got. So that's exactly in between the measurements, so I'm just going to use this. Yeah, I got just over 40 thousandths, which is great. These get torqued to almost nothing. I got some motor mounts I can put on this.